of your journey?
Well, one instance that jumps out at me that engulfs my whole life, my parents are a little older. So I didn't have the typical, okay, 30-year-old mom, 40-year-old dad, whatever you want. My parents were way older than that. So it was like in some instances I had to raise myself or had I had to endure things by myself and then support my little brother through it because essentially my parents were out of touch, out of tune. They couldn't understand due to their age. And also, because I had older parents and they were aging, it was like I had to step in, be the quote unquote mom, pay bills, go to the grocery store, clean the house, cook dinner, look after my parents sometimes when they even got sick. So it's like a child's doing this. A child should be enjoying their life, playing with their friends, playing with toys, what have you. But that wasn't the case for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then you also talked to me a little bit about something that happened this year that was really kind of like the peak of you having to grow up early. What was that?
So I got kicked out of my mom's house. I got the boot. I got the pink slip. I
Oh,
got
she
the
gave you the boot.
yeah, she gave me the boot during the pandemic.
Okay. You feel comfortable talking a little bit about what happened there?
So essentially my mom and I got into a huge verbal argument. She said something very hurtful to my little brother and I, and she saw nothing wrong with that. And then I corrected her and I said, "How could you say something so hurtful when there's millions of people dropping dead left, right, and center?" And then that blew up. Things were exchanged, not so nice things were exchanged, and then she was like, "You know what? Get out." So I
Okay.
left.
Okay. And so having to get out
Hmm.
and instantly become an adult, because it's one thing to be an adult in age, right?
Right,
So a lot of people, I know I could not wait until I turned 18
right.
because I was going to be grown. And that was just like the thing, wanting to be grown, right? But
Hmm.
it's a difference between, being of age, right? And really being emotionally and mentally ready for adulthood, right? So what immediate things kind of happened to you that made you say, okay, I may have grew up fast, I may have had a lot of responsibilities in my parents' home, but now it's real. What were some of those things for you?
Paying bills.
More than a
Because when the
notion,
bill
isn't it?
is due, when the bill is due, the bill is due. No matter how you cut it, they'll always have their hand out if you don't give them the exact change. Like when you're at the grocery store, if it's 10 cents you owe, the cashier is going to have their hands out for that 10 cents. So a similar sentiment can be tied back to paying bills. Like that was real. And paying it on time, having everything in full, making sure that my credit score was looking flawless to have everything that I had today. And it was very lonely. Like the process of becoming grown and an adult is quite lonely.
Yeah. So technically, you're still a teenager now. You're 19. So this is it.
Technically.
Like Michael Jackson said, this
This is
is it.
it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So all of the things that you've talked about, and even things that you haven't shared, but I kind of want you to reflect on just
Mhm.
your experience as a teen so far. What did your mental health look like in previous years as a teen, and what does it look like now?
High school, middle school, early childhood, it fluctuated. Some
Hmm.
days were really good, some days were god awful. And prior to me like being in therapy or being on medication, it was just wild, like free ranging. Like I didn't know what coping skills were. I didn't know what a safety plan was. I didn't know any of that stuff until I got placed into therapy and I was talking to the right people. So before that, it was like I had to regulate my emotions and deal with it in a way that I thought was okay, and in many instances it wasn't okay.
Hmm. Before you actually, went to therapy, engaged in therapy, what
Mhm.
did you think about it? Like when you first heard the word therapy, what was your thought?
Honestly, I thought it was out of reach because I never been to therapy in my life and no one in my immediate circle has been to therapy. So hearing the word, it was like something unknown, far away. But going to therapy and seeing who goes to therapy and like kids that looked like me that went to therapy, it became more familiar and it was necessary.
Hmm. So what would you say to people um who feel like therapy is for quote unquote crazy people, and you don't need to go to therapy or you don't need to take meds because of religious beliefs and things like that? What would you say to people who may need it but have reservations or negative thoughts associated with it?
I would say therapy is for everyone. There's different levels of therapy. I started off with just, talking with the therapist, and then to distract me or like to get me back on track, we would like do little activities like coloring, mindfulness, yoga, you name it. Like my therapist was really there for me. So essentially therapy is not for crazy people. It's not for people who are on the edge. Therapy is for the little ones and for big grown people like you and me. And there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with admitting that you need help, and I think it's necessary for everyone. If you're thinking about going to therapy, you should go.
Yeah, I appreciate that comment. And I was very intentional about saying quote unquote crazy, right?
You don't have to
Because
create.
of course, as a mental health practitioner, I
Mhm.
hate that.
Right.
And so many of the other derogatory names that, people call individuals with mental health issues. But a lot of people have this belief that you have to literally, like you said, be at the point of going over the edge before some type of intervention. And, you know, I look at I look at therapy and counseling and coaching, all of that, they are very different. But
Hmm.
looking at them as a group, as things similar to mechanics, right? Like we get
Right.
cars. And when we get our car, is well, some people like my husband, he'll buy a used car over a new car. But that's not the point. The point
Mhm.
is when you get this vehicle that's new to you, you expect it to be in a certain shape. So
Right.
either it's brand new and you expect no issues with it, or it's slightly used, or you just quite frankly know what you're getting. But at some point, you have to take it to the mechanic. You know what
Hmm.
I'm saying? Whether it's to do prevention stuff like an oil change, because I've had a car before, something went wrong with the oil being changed and that engine stopped and I could not use that car anymore. Okay. But the oil change, I look at that as prevention. Keep getting it at the time periods that you're supposed to, and it can help prevent certain things. And then you have times where you have to go in and serious work needs to be done. But at some point for the wellness and ability for your car to function, you go and you get work done. And I look at therapy like that. It can be prevention, it can be just a little tune up. People can go to therapy at different intervals and things like that. And it doesn't have to be right when you're going over the edge. It can literally be something that helps prevent you from going over the edge.
Right.
But what about meds? Because then you also know that there's this negative connotation or association with taking meds. How did you feel when it was first recommended to you that you could benefit from taking psychotropics?
So by the time that it got recommended for me, I was like way over the edge. Like the speech therapy was good because I was able to like process my emotions and talk about it and safety plan. But like once I went home, that stuff like went out the door because we can say things in front of the counselor to make them happy, or to make them not okay, we're going to report this to the social worker. But like once you go home, I was in a totally separate environment fighting a whole nother battle of demons. And then sometimes I wouldn't even go to therapy for, how do I say this, sometimes my therapy appointments were only once a week in a 5-day school day. So okay, I would have therapy on Monday, but what about Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday,
Or Monday night?
or Monday night? So by the time I got medication recommended for me, it was like I needed it. I accepted it immediately because I don't want to call myself crazy, but I was really going through it mentally, and it was like no one was there for me. And when my mom finally gave in, quote unquote, gave in for me to get medication, she made this real good analogy. She was like, you know what? You take Advil for your headache. I take medication for my diabetes or whatever. You can take medication for your mental health.
Yeah, very good. That's a great analogy, so to speak. And I want to make sure, I'm clear with you, and you know this about me, but
Mm.
also our listeners. I am not a psychiatrist.
Right.
I do not, as a licensed clinical social worker, have the ability to prescribe meds, nor recommend them. But
Hmm.
what I do in my role is talk to people about their feelings related, to them. And our discussion today is not even necessarily to change anybody's mind, but just put something on their mind if they happen to think differently.
Right.
And like you said, we use medication for other ailments that we may experience in life. And
Mm.
so, making a decision to take psychotropic medication is a personal one, but definitely something that we hope people would at least be open to learning more about. And people can talk to their therapists about that. If they do have those type of concerns. So thank you for sharing that. I
Mhm.
know in a lot of the work that I've done with young people who were prescribed meds, a lot of times they didn't want to take it. They would act like they were taking it, but spit them out. They would start taking it. And this is what a lot of people do, not just, teenagers or children. You'll take the medicine, you'll feel better, and then you'll think you don't need it anymore. But when in
That's
fact
so
the
dangerous.
medicine um, may actually be helping you. And obviously, if you're feeling better, it's
Mm.
having some type of impact. But what you just said is key. It is so dangerous. You cannot wean yourself off of medicine or just stop taking medicine without the consultation of a doctor. Like psychiatrists, they're MDs. They just study, the mind, right?
Hmm.
So that's something very dangerous and people shouldn't do. But another thing that you mentioned that I love, it brings attention to something that's very relevant to a person's mental health, anybody's mental health, is your environment. So a lot of times people may experience things like depression, anxiety, and things like that. Um, it could be a genetic thing, or it could be something that developed over time. And the environment has a lot to do with that. And so that's a big reason why I wrote the journal. So for our listeners, I wrote a journal called Get Lit: Learning Intentional Tools for Positive Self-Development. And it's a journal for teen girls. That is the thing that sustained me as a teenager, because you're right, and I didn't have therapy as a teenager. um i just I just had to make it, I had friends that were supportive, right? And
Hmm.
some of their parents were supportive as well. But a lot of times I felt like I didn't have anybody, I didn't have an outlet, and writing is the thing that helped me. And so it's important for people to think about, whether they're in therapy or not, what can you do to sustain your mental health in your environment, because you can only control you. So, what were some of the things that you did knowing you only had control over you during those gaps when you were waiting to go back to therapy? What were some of your coping skills?
Something that I still do to this day, and it's big, and people talk about it all throughout social media. Protecting my peace, because as you said, I can only control myself. I can only control what I say or do. Can't control mommy, daddy, sister, brother, you name it. So just protecting my peace, walking away from arguments, listening, and just thinking about what's going to be good for me in the long run. I also practice mindfulness. I'm big on self care. So, like, I like to do like nice hot showers, paint my toenails, do face masks, all that fun stuff to make me feel good, make me feel happy.
When did that start for you? When did you know self-care was important for somebody?
I think seeing at the end of my senior year of high school, transitioning to college, because that was
Okay.
very stressful because I was transitioning from childhood to young adulthood.
hmm So then, before you recognize the importance of self-care, one thing you said was that you walked away from arguments. And I wish I can say I did that. I cannot I cannot say. And I developed a little craft of arguing. Uh, were there times when that was hard and you weren't able to do that?
Oh, definitely. I'm not perfect in the slightest. And it's like, okay, I like to take the high road, but it's like when a certain family member says something and it just triggers me, you're going to get a response. I'm not going to walk away from that argument. And sometimes looking back, it wasn't worth it. But in the moment, in the heat of the moment, I was teed off. So, of course, I had to respond.
Mhm. Mhm. And that's another thing that I really try to focus on in the journal. I have something in there called the situation breakdown, and you know it
Mhm.
because you've used the journal.
Yep.
And I think that's a great way to be able to stop yourself in a moment, in a situation, and really think through it. So, can you talk about, maybe a situation where if you had known about the situation breakdown, you would have been able to work through it and maybe had a different behavioral outcome?
Right. Probably with like you petty arguments with my sisters that then
Hmm.
blew up to us not talking for X amount of time.
Yeah. And so being able to connect your thoughts, your feelings, and your behaviors and making a decision, because a lot of times we can think a situation is a certain way
Hmm.
and it's really not. It's our
It's really not.
perception. And we know perception is reality, right? So then we need to have tools that we can use in those moments to make sure we're doing some, fact checking. And I always tell my clients, look for the evidence. If I
Right.
have a belief about something, what is the evidence that that's true? And then you have to work through for yourself, is am I seeing this is this evidence what I want to see, or is it what's really there?
Right.
So thanks for sharing that.
Of course.
How would you say your mental health impacted other areas of your life, like school and things like that? Because I know for me, when it was stuff going on at home, my thing was to go to sleep. And so it didn't matter if I had a test the next day, if I had homework, so I would have to then make up for it, obviously, on the bus rides and things like that. But that wasn't a healthy coping skill for me, going to sleep. That's just shutting down. And, our brains, we go through, flight, fight, but then we also freeze. So, what would you say your other aspects of your life were like based on mental health and things that were going on behind the scenes at home?
So also one, I used to sleep a lot like you, and I would talk to people at school about it, trusted adults, and then I'll tell my therapist, and they would like sort of freak out in a way. They're like, Cheyenne, you're not supposed to sleep for like 36 hours. You're not supposed to sleep for half the day and keep all the blinds closed in your bedroom and it's just nothing but darkness because that's going to impact your mood. That's going to slow you down. All that stuff. Also, sometimes I would stress eat. Sometimes I wouldn't eat at all. Sometimes I wouldn't even drink water. Sorry to say. Sometimes I would unfortunately engage in self harm or have suicidal ideations or thoughts.
One thing that you mentioned was having a trusted adult and utilizing people at school.
Hmm.
Who did you reach out to and who were you able to talk to about these things that you just mentioned?
One, my guidance counselor. Two, the school psychologist. And then like some of my favorite teachers, like my Spanish teacher or like my English teacher or my choir teacher. Because I remember one day, I think it was during lunch, he saw my hand. And that
Mm.
was when I was cutting myself. He was like, Cheyenne, let me see your hand. And then he held my hand. And then it was like he wanted, like I could see the tears like coming in his eyes. He was like, Cheyenne, I'm gonna have to take you down to the guidance counselor office because mandated reporter, he can't keep that to himself. I was grateful because then I was down in the dumps.
Okay. Is that because you mentioned a little bit earlier, your phrase was when your mom got on board. Can you
Hmm.
talk more about what that meant? And was that connected to this particular event? Did he call your parents or just
He reported it to the counselor, and then the counselor took it from there.
okay?
But when I reference my mom getting on board, I'm talking about her like finally allowing me to take the medication, because I'm pretty sure you'd I had to be a certain age and I wasn't of age to allow myself to go on the medication. I was underage. I was under 18. I was like 16, 17. But my mom, my family's from the Caribbean, and like mental health didn't make any sense to them. It was like a foreign topic. It was like in one ear, out the other. Like, what are you talking to me about? This doesn't exist, but it actually exists.
Hmm. And so when you started talking to those trusted adults
Hmm.
at school, and even when you started going to therapy, did that help with some of the things you were experiencing, like, the depression and the suicidal ideation and self-harming?
Right. Um, Nothing happened overnight.
Of course.
It took a long time. It took forever because yeah, I probably wanted to do something that would help me, but I couldn't get my mind there. It took me a while to like process and soak everything up and like think of myself differently and start loving myself.
Hmm. It's a process. That's exactly what it is.
Right.
And it's not something, if you don't get the immediate results that you want to be your ideal self, it's not something that you give up on. You never give
Right.
up on yourself. And over time, you will become well. You
Yeah.
will. So, what would you say is your opinion about um, the things that teenage girls go through right now that they can't really talk about, with their parents? What are some of those things for Black and brown girls, or in your case, both?
You want me to name them or do you want me to like give my opinion?
Give your opinion about what they are. So, yes, name them based on your opinion.
Well, we're living in a digital age right now. Back in the day, bullying would stop once you left school. But
Hmm.
unfortunately now, bullying will follow you home if you have a phone or social media, or the people around you have social media and they show it to you. So there's definitely an uprise in bullying. There's definitely more peer pressure to have sex or to be sexually active, when that should be the choice of a person. It shouldn't be inflicted or forced or anything like that. What else? The pressure to be perfect or to be someone you're not. I see that a lot with teen girls.
Mm. Being perfect and being someone you're not,
Hmm.
right? Those can go together and those can be two separate things. Talk to me a little bit more about what you would say to someone who is feeling the need to be someone else. And before you do that, wait, let's back up. Where do you think that starts? This idea of being someone else. Where do we get that from?
I would either say like first social media and then probably TV, what we watch. No,
Yep.
but we have to step back and realize those things are superficial. When models are done modeling or on the TV set, they take off their makeup, they take off their wigs, they take out their extensions, and they a homegirl just like me. So for me, or for a teen girl to always get down on herself or make herself feel bad, like I have to look like this all the time. No, you don't. You can look like yourself and still be beautiful. You can walk in your own light and hold yourself up to your own truth and know that that's perfectly fine.
Yeah. What you said, I think, is so key about where you all get things from. So, um, I'm a millennial, but I'm towards the older end. I'm kind of smiling and laughing because I feel like I'm about to age myself. But like when I was younger, we had stuff like Black Planet and
I heard about that, but I never seen it for myself. Yeah. It
yeah,
was
we
like
had
that the hangout spot.
and MySpace, I feel like, was one of them. And then
MySpace. I heard of MySpace.
when I went to college, it was College Club. But that stuff
Mm-hmm.
to me, but I also didn't engage in Black Planet and MySpace like that. But I still feel there are major differences between those types of things that, my generation and those before me may have experienced versus what you all go through. Like
Right.
you said, social media and cyberbullying.
You can get sucked into it.
It happens. I mean, and parents, if we have parents listening, everybody knows about it. And it has even contributed to a rise in suicide among Black and brown young people. I mean, young people as young as 8 years old being impacted, and it's so sad. And so it's really important as young people to really learn about being having healthy behaviors on social media, and really challenging yourself to think about, am I the bully in this situation? And that can be a hard question to ask yourself. Are
Mhm.
you the one actually, bullying someone? um but yeah, what you all go through on social media, Instagram is a big one, that YouTube, it's so many different things now. And what you said is so true. You have to love yourself, you know. And I love how you put it. When people go home offset, they take off their makeup and they look just like us. No eyelashes and all.
No, no, no.
you know, just not the Bambies, just, barefaced and beautiful,
Right.
the same as we are. um, but a lot of girls that I work with, they say, nobody understands me. My mama, she just don't get it. What do you think about that? Have you ever felt like that you were not understood, and how did that impact you growing up?
I feel like I wasn't understood several times throughout my life growing up, and I would talk to my older sisters about that, and then they would try to explain to my mom how I felt, or explain to her how what she said to me made me feel, and all that kind of stuff. But I feel like my mom was like too far gone and so out of touch. She just chose to like ignore it. Like she wouldn't acknowledge where she went wrong or what she said, how it might have triggered me. So it's unfortunate, but you live and learn.
So what advice would you give parents about engaging their teenage daughters around a lot of the topics we've talked about today?
I say definitely moms, dads, parents, guardians. Watch your kids. You can watch them up close, but then watch them from afar. And also be on alert for silent cries for help or subtle cries for help, because I had plenty of those when I was growing up, and unfortunately those were ignored. I would also say listen to your kids. Like, don't be afraid to have an honest discussion. No yelling, no attitude, just you and me. Let's talk about it.
Nice. And so then what would you tell a teenage girl about things she could say to break the ice with her parents, guardians, or caregivers, when she needs help?
Some helpful phrases would probably be, can we talk? Are you busy? Or can we go on a walk and talk? Or all right, after dinner, can you and I sit in the living room by ourselves, no one else listening, and can I tell you about XYZ? Or be like, hey, we talked about whatever earlier and it made me feel like blah blah blah. Can we talk further about this later? Because 99.999%, if you tell someone how they feel and they're a very receptive, honest, and caring person, and the feeling that they inflicted on you was negative, they're probably going to want to fix it or hear how they can fix it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. One thing that I really, when we first met and you told me this, admired about you is your aspiration to become a neonatal surgeon.
Yes, because I love babies.
I think that is such a beautiful thing. But while you're working towards that goal, you're also working with young people now, which is super dope.
Yeah, I'm doing a lot.
You are an entrepreneur, all of those things. But I want you to talk about how you bring your life experience into the work that you do now with the young people.
Okay, so let's step back and give our audience a little background knowledge. So, I'm involved with young people in a variety of ways. I'm a youth leader at my church, Union Baptist Church. I'm with the young people there. I would volunteer in the nursery. I'm now a Sunday school teacher, believe it or not. I volunteer every Thursday with Inspired Girls Club in Hartford, and that's a mixture of younger girls, middle school age, and then a little older girls, high school age. So I really love kids. I love being around them. I mean, babies are my preference, or little ones, because they listen more. But that's fine. That's fine. I still love the older ones. I still love the older ones. But I try to. I feel like even though I'm 19, I feel like I'm getting old. But they keep me young. They keep me up to date. I feel popping when I'm around them. So they're very receptive of me and accepting.
Nice, nice. So, what are you looking forward to this season on our podcast? What topics are you excited about exploring with our different guests, and what do you think everybody should be looking out for?
Well, I can't wait to hear from everyone because I know everyone has a unique and different story, and no story is the same. You might find that there's a little bit of overlap, but everyone has their own attention grab for the podcast. But I'm really looking forward to hearing about like stress, grief, and how to navigate the holidays. Because, it's holiday season, it's getting colder, Thanksgiving is around the corner, and so is Christmas.
That's right. That's right. So, is there anything that we haven't talked about that's really on your heart to kind of share with our audience or give them information about?
Well, I just really hope that everyone tuned in today. And if you don't tune in at this time, hit replay because we really were able to talk about some real good stuff, some nice stuff. And I'm looking forward to engaging with everyone and just meeting everyone on Zoom and on the podcast.
That's right. Well, thank you so much, Cheyenne.
No
Yay.
problem.
Episode one, Still I Rise,
Woo, woo,
highlighting
woo,
our
woo,
wonderful
woo.
co host, Cheyenne Erlington. Thank you all so much for listening today. If you want to learn more about what we're up to, you can check us out on social media, Get Lit Teens. We have a Facebook group called Get Lit Teen Table Talk podcast community. Please come and join us and see, like I said, what we're up to every day.
Mhm.
If you want to learn more about me and a lot of the services that I provide, you can check out my website, which is evelynjoycoker.com. That's www.evelynjoycoker.com. We'll see you guys next week at 10 a.m. Central Time. Have a great weekend.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, are we not live anymore?
I don't know.
Okay, this is bloopers if people are still seeing this. It's the bloopers.
We're still live.
Can't
Okay.
talk to nobody else. Come here to get lit. Real talk, real life. We got the problems that you can't talk about with your mama. Come here to get lit.
My whole
Wheel
family.
it, wheel it,
Thanks so much,
wheel
Cheyenne.
it, wheel it.
You did great.
That was pretty good. I ain't cry.
Yes, look at the little page at the end.
Mhm.
And cut.
Scene.
So great conversation. Great
Thank
conversation.
you.
There were people online
Oh,
who weren't getting audio.
some people
So
said there was no sound on
yep.
Facebook.
So I kept making comments saying, hey, we're gonna have videos ready available to share for those of you who didn't have audio. I think it's in the StreamYard because I was getting audio, my recording was getting audio, but it just wasn't going through StreamYard. So
Oh.
so I just kept saying, hey, we've got a great conversation. We'll share it with you in just a moment. So what I'd love to do while I got both of you on the phone, if we could do that little intro sequence again, where you introduce the podcast. I'll do the splash screen. You introduce the podcast. You introduce Cheyenne, and then just stop it there because I stopped the recording and restarted it to try to fix the audio.
Oh.
And so I basically got a video that was like starts at about 2 minutes in.
Mm.
So I just want to capture that beginning so we have it. This
Okay.
isn't live right now or anything like that. This is just me doing a recording.
Okay.
So you'll see the video and then go ahead and take it over. And then that way I at least have it so I can, when we post it online, we can say, part A, part B or whatever, something like that.
I don't know what I said.
You were just like, hey, welcome to the podcast. This is what we're going to talk about.
You introduce yourself.
Here's who I am. Here's what I do. Let me introduce you to my co-host. It was just basically a little introduction.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Intro to
And
myself.
I'm just thinking, while I got you both here and I wouldn't mind doing that little 2-minute bit
Okay.
so that we got it. Because it's not going to be on that long video.
Got it.
So I apologize. We will get it sorted out because I definitely had audio in there. And I even checked on my video. I still had audio. It just wasn't going through StreamYard. And I was trying different things. I'm like, so whatever. We'll figure it out.
Okay.
We'll figure it out. So let me, I'll start that little intro and we'll pretend like this is the first time doing it.
Okay. So we were under 45 minutes.
Yeah, it's 11:45 right now.
Did that feel good? Did it feel rushed?
No. It was all right.
Okay. I honestly never got to coming up with the exact questions.
Oh, so you let it flow or you
Yeah.
wrote the questions down?
I wrote like one thing down. Like I have our napkin.
Oh, hey, that's how it started.
That's what I had.
That's all right.
Can't talk to nobody else.